Yeah. I'm with them, but it's when I stop watching it, I literally refuse to see it. Too much, yeah. Because we're an hour away.
Right, we are now live, folks. So while the kia ora koutou, while the clerks are bringing our first submitter in by Zoom, we're now in public session to hear oral submissions on the accessibility bill. This is going to be live streamed. It's open to the public. And I think we have New Zealand Sign Language interpretation in use. We do. Excellent. Thank you. Welcome.
Oh, no.
So kia ora koutou, ko Emily Henderson aho. I am the acting chair of the Social Services Select Committee this morning. And we are open for business and very much looking forward to hearing what our submitters have to say. How are we going with Mr. Mosen?
Morena, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts and hopefully have a little corridor on the Accessibility for New Zealanders Bill. Today I'm here as an individual disabled person who has a background in accessibility issues and public policy, and I speak only for myself. I expected to come to this committee at some point to have a discussion about the dangers of isolating accessibility from other disability rights. What I didn't expect was to come to the committee to condemn the most ineffectual and disappointing legislation that I've submitted on. A few months ago, I gave public testimony to the Royal Commission on Abuse in Care about abuse that I suffered as a child. That process has changed me in three ways. First, it gave me a new sense of assurance that I am worthy, that I'm no less deserving of equality of opportunity than any other New Zealander. This is true of all disabled people. Second, it taught me that even though we're a small country, even though some disabled people fear being shut out if they're too outspoken, I must not be afraid to speak my truth and that I have a right to do so. And third, it reinforced for me that neglect is a form of abuse. Systemic neglect of disabled people is rampant in New Zealand, and an opportunity to address one key area of neglect has been squandered. By choosing not to provide for the creation of measurable standards and a reasonable time frame for their enforcement, the government has neglected a quarter of the population, continuing our exclusion from a wide range of goods, services, jobs, accommodation, and experiences, and confining us to an inferior quality of life. This is a monumental economic and moral failure. Neglect is abuse, and the Royal Commission has made that clear. Like discrimination, abuse can be unintentional and systemic, but it's abuse nonetheless. To the government, I say this: we trusted you to use your majority to make real change, but you gave us a powerless committee. We wanted more action, but you gave us talk and tokenism. We asked for specific ways to measure the removal of accessibility barriers, and you gave us an annual report with the faint prospect of real progress in 5 years, maybe. Yet why should we trust you not to do the same thing to us after 5 years as you've done after all the talk of the last 5? We wanted an end to the exclusion and the isolation, but you have thrown us under the inaccessible bus. New Zealand signed an international convention on the rights of disabled people that specifically requires accessibility standards, and you have ignored it, setting us up for yet another embarrassing, well-deserved international reprimand. To Parliament as a whole, I point out that it is an unfair uphill struggle because no party puts strong advocates from the disability community in winnable positions on their party list. So the House of Representatives has no one with direct experiences of the struggles I face every day because of barriers that could be removed with a proactive standards-based framework. There is no way that such lackluster legislation would ever be permitted to come before this committee if the House included strong disability voices. We never know when disability will come. It often comes as we age. It might come unexpectedly because of an accident or a medical condition. But of this, I am certain. Disability will come to some of those responsible for this kicking the can down the road. The hurt and the harm this process causes me today could be the hurt and the harm it causes you at some future time. I take no pleasure in pointing that out, but that is the nature of disability. The time for platitudes, the time for claiming we need more data, the time for thinking we can be placated by any old thing calling itself accessibility legislation, the time for telling us that our turn will come has long passed. We are a quarter of the population and we will vote. We need standards and their development needs to start now because the process will take years. For reasons outlined in my written submission, those standards are best incorporated in new consequential disability rights legislation, not accessibility legislation. Take disability out of the Human Rights Act and create a new Disability Rights Act and entity. Now, the regulatory impact statement for this bill claims, and I quote, "We already have a strong human rights framework," unquote. And that demonstrates how few disabled people have been consulted. Many find the mediation process inadequate and imbalanced, and the option for further redress complex. The Human Rights Commission do a brilliant job with the tools that they have, but the framework is not strong, not compared with effective jurisdictions overseas. If there were one entity disabled people could go to that processed individual disability discrimination complaints and could then feed that data into the creation of accessibility standards where appropriate, it would minimize confusion and maximize effectiveness. Even if there is debate about who should create and enforce them, there is, I believe, an overwhelming consensus in the disability community that a regulator with standards is essential. For this reason, I urge the committee to withdraw this bill and have Whaikaha begin the first truly thorough, inclusive process on this topic that we will have had. Yes, it will take time, but if this bill were withdrawn, we will have lost nothing of consequence. If this bill passes, we may have lost the opportunity for impactful reform for a generation. And who knows when the rights of disabled people will come before Parliament again. Please withdraw this bill and then explore the full range of options, including disability rights legislation. We are not in the cabinet room. We're not even in any caucus room. So we are an easy group to sacrifice when political expediency is required. But that makes the need for this committee to discard the politics and govern with compassion and empathy all the more important. I very much appreciate the chance to share my views, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the remaining time.
Thank you, Mr. Mosen, and thank you for a very, very articulate and well put together submission. We're actually very much at time, but we started, and I've given you a couple more minutes because we started you a little late. I'm just looking around the room to see if there is a quick question here.
It's powerful.
No,
It's great.
it's
Very clear. That's very clear.
The comments coming from around the table are very powerful and very clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next submitter is Callum McMemanin. Kia ora, Callum.
Kia ora.
Welcome to the committee.
Thanks.
You've got 10 minutes. If you want to pause a little before the end and see whether there's a couple of minutes there to use for questions, that'd be wonderful.
All good. Is this water for me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Right. Just checking. Yeah, so kia ora, I'm Callum McMemanin. Imagine that you are a child and you are told that the key to your success is getting an education. And so when it comes time for you to go to school, you eagerly walk into that classroom and sit down at your desk next to all your friends. And the teacher starts writing things on the whiteboard. And those around you start eagerly taking notes, scribbling away in their little notebooks. But there's one problem. You cannot see what the teacher is writing on the whiteboard. You have a genetic condition that has impaired your vision to the point where you cannot read the whiteboard even at close range. You sit there, pen in hand, empty pages on your desk, blank stare into the distance, day after day. This feeling of anger and injustice starts swirling in your chest. You feel sick and anxious and worried about your future. You panic about the next exam that you know you will fail. You were told the only way to succeed in this society is to get educated, but you are failing. You feel like you are being left behind. And you feel like you are being left behind because that is exactly what is happening. The world is moving on without you. And so you sit there and pretend to learn because it keeps you out of trouble. While all around you, your peers are gaining knowledge day after day, failed test after failed test, telling you that you aren't good enough, that you are not achieved. All because I couldn't see. Actually, no. It was because the school was not designed to be accessible to me. It was designed to exclude me. It was not my fault. Eventually, I did manage to scrape through school once I got the right supports arranged, which took a long time and a lot of bureaucratic struggle. And I did eventually somehow get through university, mainly by Googling the answers to the exam questions because I couldn't see the lectures. So yeah, I got myself into $30,000 of debt for a degree that I Googled. And I sort of wish I could get a refund under the Consumer Guarantees Act because it was clearly not fit for purpose. Maybe that's an idea for your legislation. I'd like to have that debt cancelled. So yeah, then it came time to find a job. And when you leave the education system and you're disabled, you get quite a brutal shock. This thing called poverty happens. I couldn't find a job that was accessible for me. And my confidence got completely destroyed after multiple failed attempts to work in particular jobs that I trained for. And I started to believe that I couldn't do it. I became trapped inside the welfare system and went on a long struggle to escape it. It felt like the system wanted to keep me from cradle to the grave. The Welfare Expert Advisory Group stated that 53% of working-aged beneficiaries are disabled. This is often missing from our discussion on benefit and welfare statistics. We make up the majority of those on welfare. Maybe another expert advisory group will fix it. I remember I had negative $40 per week to spend on food after the landlord had taken their hard-earned share of my benefit money. That's what many disabled people experience, and they do not choose to be there. But eventually I did manage to get a job. I was lucky, but it took a while. And my job is to help disabled people as much as I can. And so please listen, this legislation, I don't think it will work. I don't even think there was a proper consultation process with the community before it was drafted. And I don't think creating committees is an effective way to solve problems of this scale. You would expect a huge problem would need a huge solution. And I know this because I'm invited to many of these types of disability talking groups time after time. And honestly, it's so frustrating. It feels like I'm constantly talking into the void because these groups have no power. Often the recommendations are not listened to, and it's just sad. If we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, well, it might not work. How many times must we be shown the outcome of the pattern? So if we're going to have an Accessibility Act, it can't be this one before us today. It needs to be thrown out. It needs to start again from the beginning, firstly with broad consultation with the community, and it should align closely with the government's existing commitments to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And we obviously need to start enforcing standards properly. But some of our current standards for accessibility are not adequate. For instance, the New Zealand Government Web Accessibility Standard does not apply to local government, and it doesn't apply to private businesses. It only applies to central government agencies. And make sure you're seated for this, because what I'm about to say might shock you, but disabled people want to access private businesses too. So it's kind of silly that they're excluded. In our physical accessibility standards, around our buildings and our spaces, we've got NZS 4121/2001, which is 21 years old. Our technology's progressed a lot since then. Wheelchairs have changed, for instance. We've got better technology for people with vision impairment. It needs to be updated. So it's going to be a process to make sure we've got those standards to enforce. But unfortunately, this legislation doesn't even enforce the meagre standards we have already. Basically, there's a huge amount of work going forward. Now, I've got the deepest respect for Parliament and our public service and the people that work in these rooms. And I know this might be extremely difficult, but please, I'm surely there's people in this room that can help change this and get proper legislation that helps us to enforce accessibility standards rather than another talking group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was, thank you for bringing your personal experiences in to demonstrate what you were saying. That was, again, very powerful. First question is coming from the Honourable Louise Upston.
Thanks, Callum. Very powerful submission. My question's quite simple in terms of, which countries around the world have this accessibility standards in place. So if you were to say, these 2 or 3 countries are the ones to follow, which ones are they?
Unfortunately, I'm not a huge expert on international accessibility legislation, but I've heard many of the countries we like to compare ourselves to, the US, Canada, and I think Australia, they all have better regimes in place, and the entire EU as well, with some of their standards. For instance, EN 301549, I believe, is quite a cool standard, and it applies to all digital software. So yeah, there's certainly some examples to look at.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jan.
Thanks. I just noted, and thank you for submission. It was great. In your written submission, you make the point that the government web standards have been mandated, but basically everyone ignores them.
Yes, that's
despite a government direction.
Yes. So essentially, there is a cabinet minute from 2003, which is completely covered in dust. And that is literally the only flimsy mandate that we have to impose web accessibility standards on core government agencies. Agencies can basically ignore this cabinet minutes and they don't face any consequences for it other than harming disabled people and potentially suffering that reputational risk. There is also a risk that disabled people could take government agencies to the Human Rights Review Tribunal and take it through that process, but no one's ever really done it properly for the web standards, as far as I'm aware.
Maureen,
very quickly, thank you very much, Callum. My question is around the consultation you mentioned at the beginning of your oral submission. Were you aware that the consultation was happening and you didn't get an opportunity to contribute, or were you unaware?
I've spoken to many other people in the sort of disability activism community, and most of them were not spoken to, and I was never really properly aware of a true consultation process that occurred. And the fact that I'm not aware of it, given it's something I care so much about, it raises some questions.
Yeah, thank you. It does.
Well, listen, Callum, thank you very much. That was seriously very impressive, and yeah, we're grateful to you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Next submitter is Allyson Hamblett, and she is joining us by Zoom. Kia ora, Ms. Hamblett. Welcome to the Social Services Select Committee. My name's Emily Henderson, and I'm the acting chair today. We've got 10 minutes with you. I'm sorry we started a little late. If you want to take some questions, then please finish what you need to say a few minutes early, because I've got to tell you, there are some people who want to hear, who may well have questions for you in this room.
Thank you for the opportunity for this submission. I think it's a great to have accessibility legislation that could make New Zealand more accessible, from buildings to roads to pavements, and to make a housing stock accessible, and to make our accommodation more accessible. I've heard stories that you can walk into apartments, but you have to walk up the stairs to the entrance and then get a lift up to your apartment. It's absolutely ridiculous if you've got a wheelchair or a walker. Please consider scrapping this piece of legislation. I support the idea of making it more accessible, but this legislation won't do it. Every educator needs to have a framework of guidelines to just get a minimum standard of accessible design. All kinds of orders need to be fully accessible. And the building code's 21 years old. Come on, let's update that. I mean, there's history too many defaults in the system, and builders must like to make stairs and steps rather than ramps. I hope that I think it's hard the ignorance in the building industry that they just don't think of accessible design. But if we have a strong building code, everything will be up to standard. The other point to make is that we take up more space, just moving around with wheelchairs or walkers, or as you get older, you take up more space. And squeezing people into small units to accommodate a growing population, it's not going to work, because as we get older, it gets more difficult to move around. So if we make it accessible for everyone, every single human being can enjoy moving around the city. It's an easy idea, but it's so please make this accessibility legislation do its job. Please comply with the UNCRPD. You signed up to it. And please talk to disabled people if you don't if you're not sure how to draft the legislation. Let's get a powerful SOP in place that can amend this legislation, please.
Thank you very much. And I certainly take your point regarding the accessibility of Parliament.
I can't even get in the chair.
Questions? Yes, we have a question from Maureen Pugh.
Yeah, thanks very much for your submission, Allyson. I just have a question about the number that you've put on the accessibility Aotearoa home, the new builds. You're 15% are going to be accessible. You've suggested 25. Have you based that on any sort of research or need?
No, I actually suggested 100%. We have 25% of the population are disabled. If you combine it with young families that have children and plans and budgets, that increases the accessible need.
Sure.
And if you combine that too with the elderly population that's getting older by the day, it increases to a very significant number. So it's yes, that's my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand.
Jan Logie.
And thanks for your submission, Allyson. It's really nice to see you again, on point as always. And this might be a leading question, but what's your confidence that a committee of appointed by disabled people is going to make more progress around removing those barriers when disabled people have been advocating for years to remove those barriers and have accessible housing? The Human Rights Commissioner has been advocating for 100% universal design. There's the expertise of LifeMark providing us with a model of universal design. The UN committee has multiple times told the country that we need to have more accessible housing, and there's been monitoring reports from the Donald Beasley Institute outlining what needs to be done. Do you think a committee and a report to Parliament's going to suddenly change everything?
No,
It's not leading. It was leading.
Well, and on that happy and positive note, without a lengthy question and a succinct and to the point response.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you, Allyson. We're very grateful for your time and what was another compelling submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allyson. Thank you.
All right, we are now going to hear from Mr. Thomas Bryan. And here is Mr. Bryan now.
straight ahead, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was listening to my previous speaker, very sad.
Oh, do you want to get another glass?
We're going to just get you another glass of water, Mr. Bryan. Welcome to the committee. We're very grateful. Something I haven't said to previous submitters is you can take it that we have read your written submission and you can use these 10 minutes as you please. But if you'd like some discussion with the committee, please give us a few minutes at the end. And the time is yours.
Thank you. And kia ora, and thank you, Madam Chair and committee. And if someone could actually tell me about 7 or 8 minutes when they're up.
I will interrupt.
Good, because I can get carried away.
It's all right, you're not alone.
So for me, accessibility is what I have had to deal with all my life. As a blind person, I have struggled through so many areas, but I have been out there advocating for access legislation for years. And so when I saw this coming through, I thought this will be really great. And so I do support the concept of access legislation. However, I am extremely disappointed with the legislation or the bill as it sits at the moment. There is no standards, there is no reinforcement, there is no local government or the wider community having to deliver accessibility. So we're all encouraged to get out there and keep safe. And so maybe you could buy your groceries online, but that's great if the food supermarket website is accessible.
Mm-hmm.
When I get my groceries delivered to the door, how do I know which is which? Am I meant to depend on friends, family, and volunteers to help me sort out my groceries when they turn up? When I go out to buy a new home appliance like a washing machine, I struggle to find something that is fully accessible. So am I then expected, again, to ask family, friends, or whoever to help me do my washing? These are basic fundamental things that we all need to do. I love to go and follow the Wellington Phoenix when they are playing in Wellington, but so often there is no live commentary that I can follow. I've advocated to the Human Rights Commission, who really didn't want to know in some respects. They just said, oh, it's a stadium issue, it's a sports broadcaster issue. I had to try and find a way forward myself, and I did. The manager of the Phoenix put me in touch with the broadcast team, and I sat up in the booth so I could hear the commentary because it wasn't broadcast live in the stadium. Now there is a radio broadcast, however, it's only when the Phoenix are in town. TV is something I love to do, but it's not accessible. So I can pay the same as you pay for my Sky subscription, but I have to ask someone else, what's on TV tonight? Then I want to choose a program. Can you select that program for me? Whereas Sky in the UK and other providers in the States, it's mandatory that their set-top boxes are accessible. This bill will do none of that. I go to the doctors and get medication. I get it home and there are bottles that are very similar. I've worked out a system now. I hassle the pharmacist. I do all sorts of things to try and figure out and identify which is which. But if I have a bit of a lapse in memory and think, oh, shivers, now, is this the one I meant to take in morning only? Overseas, there are lots of ways in which medication can be labelled, braille, large print, and with a code on the bottom of the bottle that I can scan with my phone or put on a reader that will read out what that medication is. We don't have any of that in New Zealand, and this legislation won't do any of those things for me. I can't see any real advantage in what this legislation will do for disabled people. As someone has already said, we are 25%. We are a quarter of the population. But where do we see ourselves in stats? Where do we see ourselves in a quality of life, the same as everybody else? No, we're at the bottom of the heap. There is no recognition of the high levels of unemployment in the disability community. When the broadcasters get out there and they talk about the stats, do we see the high percentage of disabled people being reported? No. We're a forgotten group in the community. And this legislation will do nothing to change that. Unfortunately, the USA, Europe, UK, they all have standards and a mandatory body that educates and then enforces when people don't comply. That's what we need to see here, an independent body that can prioritise, that can work to bring about change, to enforce that standards are there. I wanted to go to the movies the other week. Great. Oh, there's no audio description at the movies. But there is if you go to the States. This legislation won't do that. It will only focus on, as it sits at the moment, government. We all live, our lives live outside of government. We live and work in the community. We need to be able to access those things. Recently, Wellington City Council, like other councils, have introduced cycle lanes. Great, keep cyclists safe. But for me, I have to walk on the footpath, cross the cycle lane to get on a bus. I have to cross the cycle lane when I get off the bus and hope to hang that the cyclist has seen me and stopped. You know, we have electric buses and cars. Internationally, all those vehicles are mandated to have audio vehicle alert systems, but not in New Zealand. We introduced e-scooters. We put them on the footpath. Many cities have said, no, that's not safe, put them on the road. But we still endanger the lives of older people and disabled people. So this legislation, again, will go nowhere to addressing those sorts of issues.
And I'm going to give you your 7-minute warning.
Right.
8-minute warning.
I did stand for the local body elections for the regional council in Wellington. The process wasn't particularly accessible. The guys at the regional council are on one of their public transport advisory groups are great. I keep hassling them to try and bring about change to make transport more accessible. But the process in standing wasn't that accessible. Lots of PDFs to read.
Yeah.
Not accessible PDFs, lots of graphics. And unfortunately, I wasn't elected, but you know, that's the way it is. And that's, we all put ourselves out there for that.
Right. We have a question from Anahela.
Certainly.
If you're okay to take
yes, most
questions.
definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Thank you for your insightful information and just making us aware of what we're not aware of. But my question really is, in terms of this bill, is do you think this is a starting point?
I think it's a starting point, but it needs radical change. I think without standards, without some sort of independent authority, then it's going to go nowhere. We won't see significant change for the lives of people with disabilities. We know it's going to take time, but surely we need to start the journey, but we need to start the journey well. It's like building a house. You know, you can't think about building accessibility in afterwards. It costs more. So let's get it right at the beginning and develop it as we go in partnership with disabled people.
Thank you so much. You did mention international, other countries who are doing it better than we are.
Yeah.
Perhaps our officials are listening, and if you could just remind us of which countries so that we can get those.
Have a look at the ADA legislation in the USA, the European standards on accessibility, the UK, even our neighbours in Australia do it better than we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also was thinking that we will be asking the officials to follow up those standards. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, very eloquent, very well argued, and extremely well exampled. Our next submitter is Deaf Aotearoa. And I think we have Anthony Sammons, who's the chair. On Zoom, excellent. Kia ora, Mr. Salmon. My name is Emily Henderson. Oh, Taryn, if you could put yours.
Sorry, needed microphone. Apologies. Hi, sorry, I'll start again. Hello, kia ora everybody, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Anthony Sammon. I'm the Deaf Aotearoa Executive Board Chair. So Deaf Aotearoa is New Zealand's primary non-government organisation representing the voice of deaf people and the deaf community. We are also involved in the DPO coalition. We represent the best interest and well-being of deaf people, and we're working towards accessibility. And we want deaf people to be included in society in the same way as everybody else.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Sammon. I'm very pleased to have you here. I just wanted to quickly say to you that if you can take it as read that we have read your submission. But if you would like to pause a couple of minutes before the end of your 10-minute slot and take questions, it's entirely up to you, we would be grateful. And now it's over to you.
Thank you. So I'll keep my presentation brief so we've got time for questions at the end. So Deaf Aotearoa supports the development of a legislative approach to identify, prevent and remove barriers and give deaf people full access to society. But the bill, the way that it is written, this approach means that the recommendations to agencies to remove barriers are not binding and not enforceable. So possibly they could be ignored. Deaf Aotearoa and the deaf community are surprised and disappointed by this approach because we've been reassured many times that this would be a game changer and this would change the lives of deaf and disabled people. So everything at the moment is dependent on the competency and members of this accessibility committee. And we're concerned that deaf people won't be represented in this community. We want to make sure that there is at least one person in the committee that has competency and knowledge of a deaf culture and a deaf worldview. Also concerned about the timeframes and how long it'll take for action to commence. Deaf people want improved to accessibility to housing, to information, to their community and technology and public spaces, the same as everybody else. They want that on an equal footing. And we don't believe this is specified in the bill. And we can already tell you right now what we need to do in each of those areas. We don't need to wait for an accessibility committee to come up with recommendations over things we already know. We're also concerned that the timeframes will mean it could be years before deaf and disabled people see any action. And even then, it's not guaranteed. So we urge you, please, to speed things up and show the commitment to develop an accessibility strategy as soon as possible. Deaf and disabled people want to see their lives improved and accessible, and there needs to be a degree of binding and enforceability. Otherwise, how can this proposed bill for a framework for accelerating accessibility be held accountable for the community, for the deaf community and disabled people? So the United Nations Committee on the Rights of People with Disabilities has called for the New Zealand government to take another look at this bill following the select committee process to address disabled people's concerns. They also recommend that New Zealand adopts and implements an accessibility strategy, and Deaf Aotearoa supports the UN recommendations. Overall, Deaf Aotearoa asks two things. One, that they act on the recommendations of the UN Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability, and assuming that the Accessibility Committee goes ahead, it ensures that it includes a member that has the culture cultural and understanding of a deaf worldview, similar to the recommendations that the committee members have a knowledge over Te Ao Māori and Tikanga Māori, because New Zealand Sign Language is also an official language of New Zealand and should be treated the same way as Te Reo Māori. So thank you. That brings my submission to an end. Are there any questions?
Before we continue, Anthony, I've shortchanged you slightly. You're an organisation rather than an individual, of course, and so you actually do have 5 additional minutes. I know that there are already questions in the room, but I'll leave it to you as to whether you want to continue for a little bit, take the questions, see where they get to, and perhaps have a peroration at the end.
No, that's fine. I'm finished. I'm happy to take questions now.
Thank you. In that case, our first one is from Dan, and then Jan, and then Karen.
Thank you, Anthony. What countries, in your view, are doing well in responding to the needs of deaf people?
Good question.
That's quite a difficult question to respond to, because there's lots of different countries. Some are good, some are better than others, some have better access. So there is quite a lot of variation over there. Europe, Germany, England, America have good accessibility for deaf people related to sign language and to, with captions and what was that last bit? I'm just going to interpret, just clarify. Audio translation, which relates to accessibility.
Thank you.
Jan.
Hopefully I can sneak in 2 quick questions.
Oh,
she's cheeky, maybe. So the first question is, do you have a concern that this might create a bottleneck for removing barriers, that government agencies who might be doing work now might delay that work by sending it to these committees instead of actually just getting on and removing the barriers?
Yeah, I do have concerns around that. Yeah, that is a concern.
And the follow-up question is, we've heard from officials that they understand this isn't the legislation Access Alliance wanted, but that it's better to have legislation than no legislation. They know that we don't actually need legislation to set up a committee and have reports to Parliament, but it's so important for disability communities to have legislation. That's why we've got this. Is it the view of Deaf Aotearoa that it's better to have something inadequate than nothing at all?
That is agree. It is a starting point. We need that starting point. But Deaf Aotearoa agree with the UN committee about an accessibility strategy. We need action, not just to delay it and kick it down the road. We need a legislation, yeah. But we don't want to see that delay. We want a strategy that has action and that will actually impact improvements in accessibility. We started with the Sign Language Act in 2006, which made our language an official language, but now that's being reviewed again. That's 14 years later. So we've been waiting for that accessibility legislation, for 14 or 15 or 16 years, and we want to see the action now. So yes, having something is great, but we need it to be enforceable, and we need a process that will improve accessibility for the disability and deaf community now, not in years and years and years to come.
And our next question comes from Karen.
So my question is really around the consultation around this bill, and we've heard from some submitters that they didn't necessarily know that this was happening, or they had been spoken to, or they knew a lot of the disabled community that probably would have wanted to have been included but weren't. And we've also heard from one submitter to withdraw the bill and go back to the drawing board. And I heard a comment from you saying we need to take another look at this bill. So I'm just wanting to sort of know what you meant by that. Do you mean pause the bill, go back and do more consultation? And what would you like to see?
Deaf Aotearoa, we're involved in the DPO coalition. So we have we've spoken to government officials, and we've said that we want enforcement, and I agree that the consultation with community needs to happen again, and we need to kind of get on board with what they say. Deaf Aotearoa and the DPO coalition have said that we need disabled people and we need something that is accountability. There needs to be some accountability for action. And I think that's the important thing, that we need to see action in this bill. And if you're having consultation again and nothing changes, then there's just no point. So we need consultation that's linked to action.
Thank you. Have we got any further questions? Anthony, would you like to say anything further?
Just one idea I would like to add. Lots of the time, disabled people talk about the need to consult with us before and middle and at the end, and that applies to accessibility well. We're talking about principles of universal design, we're talking about lots of other factors, and where the community knows what the community knows what, just go back. So talked about universal design. Yeah, universal design. And I know that private businesses find that hard. It's hard to encourage private businesses, but there are benefits for that. And disabled people, we're part of the economy. We buy things, we have jobs. If we don't have work, we don't have access, then we don't have access to the economy. So we need to start right back at that, build up in our buildings or apartments, or those standards and other things that we think about. Accessibility first, if we include that. If people aren't included, it doesn't match that. So we need that key change. It's really important for us to think about that, the theory of accessibility first in everything in New Zealand. So it means New Zealand is inclusive for everybody to everything.
We have one more question.
Thank you. Maureen Pugh speaking. Just in light of that conversation, is it more to do with marketing and selling the ideas to architects, to local councils, private enterprise, rather than legislation which forces change on people? I just wonder if you can give me your insight into how you think those entities would willingly embrace the change without legislation.
The first point is that the legislation needs to be in place and the government needs to commit to accessibility. For example, we need to show it. We need to demonstrate that to private businesses, to show equity to private businesses. So really that's why legislation is important. But also for disabled people, they need to show and they need to hold the government to account. Because, we've already been advocating this for 30 or 40 years. We're fed up we're fed up of having to be the watchdogs and continue to lobby for this. So we need that to include a government approach.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been really helpful and illuminating, and another highly persuasive, very authoritative submission. Thank you very much. And thank you for the work that Deaf Aotearoa does in our community. We have some very strong advocates in my home electorate of Whangarei. Thank you. And
thank you.
We have about 2 minutes before our next submitter joins us. Or is our next? Tania is available, and that is, unless anyone is in need of a 2-second break. Everyone all right? All right. We next have Tania Ali. Jan. Kia ora, Tania. It's lovely to have you with us.
Kia ora.
Ko Emily Henderson aho. I am the acting chair of the Social Services Select Committee this morning. We're very happy to have you with us. We've read your submission, so you don't need to read it out, but if you would like to, it's absolutely up to you. This is your 10 minutes. What would be great would be if at about with a few minutes to go, you could just pause and perhaps have a discussion with us. But that's up to you. If you just want to use this time to talk to us, that's absolutely fine. And kia ora and welcome.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for allowing me to come here today for this committee. Thank you. Lovely to meet you all. My name is Tania Ali. I'm from Wellington. I would like to talk about accessibility, about how it should follow Article 9 and how we can encourage and improve problems from the past. I want to let you know I want New Zealand to be more accessible for people to communicate overall. I don't want to see these barriers. I want to make sure that we have a positive impact. I've been working and researching and giving a lot of time, and I found out that there's so many problems with New Zealand immigration. Also, I want to talk about deaf people from overseas moving to New Zealand. And if they don't have English as a language or sign language, we need to support and help those people. And to become New Zealanders and have a new life here in Aotearoa. I found out New Zealand, 77% of people from overseas who move to New Zealand, around 23% of those people who are born in New Zealand. And I'm just going to clarify. So 77% of people from overseas move New Zealand. Okay. Those people don't have what access barriers experience. Yeah, some of those people have access barriers. So, some people through work or their family members, maybe children that come to New Zealand, look when they're applying for a visa relating to that. They don't realise deaf people experience barriers. Okay, hold. when accessing immigration services. And so I've done quite a lot of realised, and I've understood a lot about immigration policy and law. There's 45 different information topics around holiday visas, working visas, travel visas or tourist visas, and family, temporary and permanent visas for people who move to New Zealand. I didn't know about that. Deaf people don't know about this information. And the second thing, there's information from the RAF about refugees, sorry. We have deaf refugees from overseas. And I've done some research and I've met a lot of these people and supported these people. And there's no information to support or help them. We recommend, so refugees coming to New Zealand don't know how to communicate. And they have to, they don't often have the access to interpreters. And so it's a waste of time because this is a barrier to communication and they don't know what to do. So, if in the English, a lot of the forms and language used in immigration process is very linguistically dense and it goes over people's head. So, same with the doctors, they need to have some tests and various different things. So all of that information and evidence, that person has to provide that evidence. And sometimes people just give up because, people aren't listening to them. And so we need to think about how we might support these people because it's just not working. So it's really important because people don't want to miss out on communication. So I'm trying the best for these people. I'm learning to support I'm supporting my husband coming to New Zealand 3 times. We have failed, 2 times I've failed. And I didn't understand a lot of the information. And we need to really improve and encourage deaf education. And we need to use sign language in these instances. And the government and the New Zealand immigration advisors don't know how to use sign language. So I'm talking about 2013 up until now. I've heard that they've shut down New Zealand immigration. Lots of the offices have closed, and if they change under the national government, and then when Labor was elected, that there was more offices, and through coronavirus things shut down, but things are improving. We need to encourage these improvement because people miss out on access. And there is no help available in communication. So I want to propose that information be put in the law for the future and New Zealand policy will improve. I think it's really important to provide people from other countries, but other countries do have this available. The next thing I wanted to talk about is information. That was about information. Now I want to talk about, I'm a Māori person. I'm from up north. I'm from Ngāpuhi. And my second affiliate, I whakapapa also to Ngāti Te Whare Toa. That's near Taupo, near Lake Taupo. So I grew up with my family in Māori culture and I understood, but I didn't really know my Māori language. So I'm learning and, I've successfully learnt Te Reo Māori and I graduated 2 weeks ago, part of accessibility through English, but I also want accessibility in Te Reo and sign language. I want all 3. They're part of my identity, part of improving the way that I identify. So we need to have better access to encourage people. I work together with Wellington City Council. I'm in Wellington Accessibility I'm learning from Wellington about the roads, buses, the barriers that people face. We want to remove those. And of course, 1 in 4 in our team in Parliament, we discuss with 12, a network of 12 government, from local government and council, and from, you know, all over New Zealand and Auckland, and we work together. And we're really focused on accessibility because it's really important to me. I'm really passionate about that. From 2019, I started that. And, you know, we've been advocating. So I've been on this learning journey, and I've been studying since 2000, and to talk about accessibility in transport and information, and how this relates to travel and also to work and to getting jobs and meeting with people face to face. My experience of working with government for 11 years, I've been involved in SSC, which is the, SSC, what does that mean?
State Services.
I worked there for 6 months, and I was training with a group, and I was showing evidence about how to work with deaf and how to be in a deaf space, and how to support EEO, equal opportunities employment. I was part of the monitoring group for that, for government, and spreading the news throughout New Zealand. And so I was providing information about my life as a deaf person and my experience. And that information was spread out there in a book named Step. It was a Step book. Yeah, it was called, I have that book at home, I could show you. It was really fantastic for accessibility from 1922 up till now, like what the progress has been in that. And now I've moved to New Zealand Forestry.
That's great. That's wonderful. Listen, I'm afraid we're very much at time. I'm just going to look around the room quickly to see if are there any questions. We've got Teresa Nagobi would like to speak to you quickly.
Got a second. Kia ora, Tania, and just wanted to say thank you for the work that you're doing in the with our kapiti teachers, just to make sure that they also are able to support our tamariki. Just around, just bring it back to the bill really quickly. I just wanted to your thoughts on, I hear you when you're saying about the accessibility and the work that you're doing, but just your thoughts on the bill really quickly, maybe in a sentence. Do you think this is a good start? Or what is it that you think? Do you think this bill is going to do what it needs to do? Or do you think it needs to go further? Or do you think we need to start again? What are your thoughts in one sentence?
Okay. I believe education to improve and will develop with sign language access for all for New Zealand. We need Māori, English and Te Reo, and we need New Zealand policy for everyone, because people don't know how to support and work through. We need a framework and a process on how to improve New Zealand accessibility, particularly in immigration and for business services for all of New Zealand deaf. We need to make sure that workplaces.
Kia ora. And thank you thank you, Tania. It's been really interesting, and I thank you. I note that I am from Taitokare, and so greetings from the land of Ngāpuhi. although he tangata tiriti aho, and I noticed you're working on the Kapiti Coast, which is where my whānau is from. Thank you for what you've said, and thank you for the work you've done. And certainly, I don't think anyone has brought to us the link with immigration services. So it's been a very interesting example. Thank you for your time.
Good, thank you.
Kia ora, ngā mihi.
I'll just let you know that I believe that is the end of needing to have an interpreter here. So I will bid you farewell and wish you well for the rest of the select committee process.
Well, on behalf of all of us, thank you, Taryn. Very grateful for your hard work this morning.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again. Okay, that concludes oral submissions for today on this bill. We now move back to private session, which means submitters, thank you so much for your time. But if you and any other members of the public could now leave us to our next stage of our job,